Writing variant equals, document, ID equals 58321. Title equals Part 1. Sign the divorce papers tonight, or I will make sure you leave this marriage with nothing. She said it without raising her voice. That was what I remember most. Not the words. Not even the divorce papers sitting between us on the kitchen island. Her voice. Calm. Certain. Almost bored. Like she had already won. I looked down at the papers, then at my wife, Claire. Her wedding ring caught the morning light as she folded her arms across her chest. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows, turning our quiet suburban street gray and blurred. For 12 years I had believed that house was the safest place in my life. That morning, it felt like a courtroom. I did not touch the papers. Claire exhaled sharply. Are you seriously going to make this difficult? I looked at her. No. That answer seemed to irritate her more than an argument would have. She expected anger. Begging. Questions. Maybe even tears. She got silence. The room did not move. My foundation did. My name is Daniel Carter. I am 43 years old, and for most of my adult life, I built things. Businesses. Properties. Contracts. A life that looked ordinary from the outside. I was not born rich. I did not grow up with a trust fund or a family name that opened doors. I learned early that money could disappear faster than it arrived, so I became careful with it. Every investment had a reason. Every contract had a purpose. Every signature mattered. Claire knew that. At least I thought she did. We met when I was 31. Back then, I was working out of a small office above a hardware store, wearing the same 2 suits until the elbows started to shine. Claire used to bring me coffee when I worked late. She would sit across from my desk, swing her feet beneath the chair, and tell me that one day I would build something big. You are always thinking 3 moves ahead, she once told me. I smiled. I have to. She laughed. I like that about you. I remembered that sentence while staring at the divorce papers. Some memories stay warm until the truth walks into the room. Then they turn cold. Claire picked up the papers and pushed them closer. Our attorneys already discussed the settlement, she said. You will keep your personal belongings. I want the house, the investment accounts, and my share of the company. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because she had no idea what she was asking for. You already decided all that? Yes. Her answer came quickly. Too quickly. There was confidence behind it. The kind that comes from believing the other person has no move left. She tapped one finger against the papers. You should have thought about this before making me miserable. I finally looked up. Did I? Her expression tightened. For a second, either of us spoke. Then she leaned forward. I am done, Daniel. There it was. The sentence that ended 12 years of marriage. I nodded once. All right. She stared at me as if I had spoken another language. All right. Yes. She seemed disappointed. Maybe she wanted a fight because fights make people careless. I knew something she did not. 3 weeks earlier, my attorney had asked me to review an old document. A document Claire had never seen. A document I had almost forgotten existed. And that morning, sitting beneath the cold kitchen light, I realized something that made the divorce papers look very different. Claire thought she was walking away with half of my life. She had no idea what the new prenup said. Writing variant equals, document, ID equals 74106. Title equals Part 2. I already signed the new agreement, my attorney said. Your wife just doesn't know it exists. Those words had stayed with me for 3 weeks. Now, sitting across from Claire, I understood exactly why. She believed the divorce was already finished. She believed I was trapped. And she believed the man sitting quietly at that kitchen island was still the same husband who had spent 12 years saying yes just to keep the peace. She was wrong. But I wasn't ready to tell her why. Not yet. I pushed the divorce papers back toward her. I'll have my attorney review everything. Claire's eyebrows lifted. Your attorney? Yes. She gave a short laugh. You don't need to make this complicated, Daniel. We already agreed on everything. I looked at her. We did? She hesitated. It was barely a second. But I noticed. That was something marriage had taught me. You learn the smallest changes in the person beside you. The pause before an answer. The eyes that stop meeting yours. The smile that arrives too late. I had spent years ignoring those details. Not anymore. Claire picked up her handbag. I'm going to my mother's. Okay. She stopped at the doorway. You really have nothing to say? I thought about the nights I had come home exhausted and still cooked dinner because she was tired. The vacations I canceled because her career needed attention. The properties I bought in both our names because I believed marriage meant sharing everything. I thought about the first apartment we rented, with its broken heater and thin walls. We had eaten takeout on the floor because we couldn't afford a table. Claire had once rested her head against my shoulder and whispered, Whatever happens, we build this together. I believed her. That was the dangerous part. I believed her. I hope you get what you want, I said. Her face hardened. I will. The front door closed. The house became silent. For several seconds, I stood there without moving. Then I walked into my office. The room smelled faintly of leather, paper, and the coffee I had forgotten to finish. My desk faced a wall of windows overlooking the backyard. 12 years of photographs sat on the shelves. Our wedding. Our first house. Business dinners. Christmas mornings. A perfect life. At least in photographs. I opened the bottom drawer. Behind an old property file was a black folder. I pulled it out. There was no dramatic music. No thunder. No warning. Just paper. Sometimes the most powerful things in a man's life are quiet enough to fit inside a folder. The first page carried a date from 7 years earlier. The second carried signatures. Mine. Claire's. And the signature of an attorney we had both trusted. The original prenup had been signed before our wedding. But 3 weeks ago, after discovering Claire had already begun moving money and preparing for divorce, I had gone back to the same attorney. There was a problem with the old agreement. A serious one. So we had prepared an amendment. A new set of terms. I ran my thumb across the edge of the document. Claire had never read it. She had never asked. She had been too confident that the old version protected her. That confidence was about to become her biggest mistake. I closed the folder. I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because this wasn't about winning a divorce. It was about finding out how much of my marriage had been real. And for the first time, I was willing to learn the answer. Writing variant equals, document, ID equals 31684. Title equals Part 3. The moment she saw the second page, her face changed. I would remember that moment long after the divorce was over. Not because she screamed. She didn't. Not because she cried. She didn't. She simply stopped moving. But that came later. First, I had to understand how we had arrived there. The next morning, I drove to my attorney's office before sunrise. The city was still half asleep. Streetlights reflected across the wet pavement, and the windshield wipers moved back and forth with the same mechanical rhythm. I liked mornings like that. They gave a man room to think. My attorney, Michael Grant, had been handling my business affairs for almost a decade. He was not the kind of lawyer who filled silence with unnecessary words. Gray hair. Dark suit. Sharp eyes. When I walked into his office, he already had the black folder on his desk. "You're sure you want to proceed?" he asked. "Yes." He opened the folder. "The amendment was executed properly. Your original agreement remains valid, but the new terms change several critical provisions." "I know." He looked at me over his glasses. Daniel, she may challenge it. I expect her to. And if she does, this could become expensive. I sat back. Money isn't the problem. Michael nodded. I figured. The problem was never money. Money was simply what people revealed themselves around. For 12 years, Claire had watched me build my company from a small consulting operation into something worth far more than either of us had imagined when we married. She had seen the late nights, the contracts, the risks, the failed deals, the one year when I almost lost everything. And she had been there when the first major acquisition changed our lives. At least, I thought she had been there with me. Looking back, I realized she had been watching. There is a difference. I remembered the first time she asked how much the company was worth. We were sitting on the back patio, drinking wine after dinner. She smiled casually. Just curious. If you ever sold, what would your share look like? I laughed. Why are you thinking about selling? I'm not. She took another sip. I just want to understand our future. At the time, I thought that was reasonable. Marriage is supposed to involve planning. So I answered. I told her about the company valuation, the properties, the investments, the structure. I gave her numbers because I trusted her. Later, the questions became more specific. Which accounts? Which properties? What was held personally? What belonged to the company? Could anything be transferred? I noticed. But I didn't suspect. I called it curiosity. I called it financial planning. I called it marriage. Those words sound different now. Michael closed the folder. The amendment was created because the circumstances changed, he said. You were already restructuring certain assets for business purposes. We made sure the agreement reflected those changes. And the key provision? He paused. The key provision is exactly what we discussed. I nodded. No need to repeat it. The important thing was that Claire had signed the original agreement years ago, believing she understood the boundaries. She had never imagined those boundaries could change. And she certainly never imagined that the new terms would determine what happened next. My phone vibrated. A message from Claire. We need to meet today. A second message arrived before I could respond. I spoke to my lawyer. He says you can't hide assets from me. I stared at the screen. Then I smiled. Not because she was wrong about the law, but because she was already fighting a battle she didn't understand. I typed one sentence. Then let's meet. I put the phone away. Outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds were beginning to break apart. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was curious. Because Claire wanted a divorce. She wanted the house. She wanted the money. She wanted the life we had built. But she had never asked the one question that mattered. What exactly had she signed? Writing variant equals, document, ID equals 42715. Title equals Part 4. Daniel, you don't understand what you're giving up, Claire said at the moment she sat down. No greeting. No apology. Just certainty. We were sitting across from each other in a quiet private room at a downtown restaurant, the kind of place where conversations stayed behind closed doors and nobody asked questions. Claire looked different from the woman who had stood in our kitchen the day before. Her posture was straighter. Her expression was sharper. Her attorney sat beside her, a thin folder placed neatly in front of him. I noticed the folder. Then I noticed Claire watching me. She wanted me nervous. She wanted me to feel like I had walked into a trap. Instead, I ordered coffee. The waiter left. Silence settled over the table. Claire leaned forward. I've tried to make this easy. I almost laughed. Easy for who? Her attorney cleared his throat. Mr. Carter, my client believes the proposed division is reasonable. Proposed? Claire glanced at him. Then back at me. The house. The investment accounts. My portion of the company. She said the list slowly, like she was reading items from a grocery receipt. I listened. I didn't interrupt. Because 12 years ago, when we were young and broke, Claire and I had owned almost nothing. Our first apartment had one bedroom, crooked blinds, and a refrigerator that made a grinding sound every time it started. We used to count bills at the kitchen table. She would stack the receipts. I would calculate what we could postpone. Sometimes dinner was pasta. Sometimes it was nothing. But we were happy. At least I thought we were. I remember one winter night when the heat stopped working. We sat on the floor wrapped in blankets, laughing because neither of us could afford the repair. Claire leaned against me and said, "One day we're going to miss this." I believed her. That was the beginning. My company came later. Slowly. 1 client. Then 3. Then 10. I worked from sunrise until the city lights came on. There were years when I slept in my office more often than I slept at home. Claire complained sometimes. I understood. I told her it would be worth it. And eventually it was. The first major contract changed everything. Then came the acquisitions. The commercial properties. The investment portfolio. The house with the long driveway and the quiet backyard. Our life became comfortable. Then expensive. Then complicated. Claire changed with it. At first, it was subtle. She stopped asking how my day went. She started asking what things were worth. She became interested in private clubs, luxury events, people whose names appeared in business magazines. I didn't judge her. I thought she was enjoying the life we had built. But somewhere along the way, she stopped saying, "we." She started saying, "mine. Mine. My lifestyle. My security. My future." The word never sounded dangerous until divorce entered the room. Across the table, her attorney opened his folder. "The proposed settlement reflects the contributions made during the marriage." I looked at him. "Contributions?" "Yes." I nodded slowly. "Then I assume you've reviewed the prenup." He paused. Claire answered for him. "The original prenup." I looked at her. "Of course." Her confidence returned. "You signed it." "So did you." "Yes." "And you remember the terms?" She smiled. "Very clearly." I said nothing. Because she remembered the old terms. Not the new ones. That distinction was about to become very expensive. Her attorney slid a document across the table. "We would prefer to resolve this without litigation." I glanced at the document but didn't touch it. "Then resolve it." Claire frowned. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No." I finally picked up my coffee. "You're assuming I have something to lose." Her eyes narrowed. For the first time, uncertainty appeared. It lasted only a moment. But I saw it. And I knew the next conversation would be different. I stood. "Send everything to Michael." Claire stared at me. "You're really going through with this?" I looked at her wedding ring. Then at mine. "I didn't ask for the divorce." Her face tightened. "You wanted me to stay?" I shook my head. "I wanted the truth." I walked away before she could answer. Behind me, I heard her chair scrape against the floor. The calm was gone. And somewhere inside that black folder in Michael's office was the reason why. The next time Claire saw the new prenup, she wouldn't be sitting across from me at a restaurant. She would be sitting in a lawyer's office. And this time, she would finally read every page. Colon. Colon colon, writing variant equals, document, ID equals 90547. Title equals Part 5. Your wife has been planning this longer than you think. Michael said it quietly. That was the sentence that changed the way I remembered the last 2 years of my marriage. I was back in his office the following afternoon, sitting across from him, while rain traced thin lines down the windows. He opened a second folder. Inside were copies of bank statements, property records, company documents, and correspondence between Claire and her attorney. Nothing dramatic at first. Just paperwork. But paperwork has a way of becoming dangerous when you know what to look for. Michael slid the first page toward me. She started moving personal funds months ago. I stared at the numbers. Small transfers. Then larger ones. Different accounts. Different dates. All carefully spaced apart. I looked up. Why didn't I notice? Because you trusted her. That answer landed harder than it should have. I looked back at the documents. There was something almost clinical about betrayal when it was printed in black and white. No shouting. No tears. Just numbers. Evidence. A trail. Michael continued. She also requested information about the company structure. I turned another page. Questions about ownership. Questions about distributions. Questions about assets acquired before the marriage. Questions about the original prenup. Everything was there. Claire had not suddenly decided to leave me. She had been preparing. For how long? I didn't know. Maybe months. Maybe longer. The realization made the room feel colder. I thought about the dinners where she seemed distracted. The nights she stayed late at charity events. The sudden interest in our financial structure. The questions I had dismissed. What was the company worth? What did we own? What was in my name? At the time, they had sounded like ordinary questions from a wife planning her future. Now they sounded like inventory. Michael placed another document on the desk. This is the important part. I looked down. It was the amendment. The new prenup. My signature appeared at the bottom. So did the attorney's. Claire's signature was not there. She had never signed it. I frowned. Then how is it enforceable? Michael leaned back. That depends on the circumstances and the applicable law. But this isn't the only document. He opened another file. This is what matters. I read the page. The room became very quiet. The amendment had been prepared after a major change in our financial structure. It established clear boundaries around certain assets, clarified ownership, and documented what would remain separate if the marriage ended. But there was more. The new terms also addressed voluntary disclosures and financial transfers made in anticipation of separation. My eyes stopped on one paragraph. Claire had already begun moving money. That mattered. Not because of the amount. Because of the timing. She had been preparing for a divorce while still telling me everything was normal. I closed my eyes for a second. There is a particular kind of pain that comes when someone betrays you strategically. An affair is one thing. A lie can happen in a moment. But planning is different. Planning means someone had time to stop. Claire had time. She kept going. Michael watched me carefully. You don't have to fight her emotionally, he said. I know. Then don't. I opened my eyes. What do you recommend? Facts. He tapped the folders. Documents. Dates. Signatures. Transfers. Communications. Let the paperwork speak. I nodded. That was exactly what I needed. Not revenge. Not anger. Clarity. That evening, I drove home alone. The house looked exactly the same. The porch light was on. The flowers Claire had planted in spring were beginning to wilt. Inside, her perfume still lingered in the hallway. For 12 years I had walked through that front door believing I was coming home. Now I understood something. A house can remain standing long after a marriage has collapsed. I went upstairs. In our bedroom, I opened the closet and found an old photograph from our wedding. Claire was laughing. I was looking at her like she was the only person in the room. I stared at that younger version of myself. He had no idea what was coming. He had no idea that one day his wife would demand a divorce and expect him to surrender everything without a fight. He had no idea there would be a new agreement. A hidden paper trail. A financial strategy. And a moment when Claire would finally understand that the man she thought she could outmaneuver had been preparing too. I put the photograph back. Then my phone rang. Michael. His voice was different this time. Daniel, you need to come in tomorrow morning. Why? A pause. Claire's attorney requested the complete prenup file. I stood still. Why now? Another pause. Because they found out there was an amendment. My grip tightened around the phone. For the first time, the silence in the house felt like the calm before a storm. Claire knew. And tomorrow, she was going to see exactly what she had signed. Writing variant equals, document, ID equals 61428. Title equals Part 6. Daniel, what exactly did you change? Claire asked the question without looking at me. She was staring at the document. Page 1. Page 2. Then the signature page. Her attorney had stopped speaking. Michael sat across the conference table, hands folded, watching quietly. Morning light spilled through the windows of the law office, pale and cold against the polished wood. Outside, traffic moved through downtown like nothing had happened. Inside, my marriage was being reduced to paper. Claire turned another page. Her fingers slowed. This isn't the agreement I signed. No, I said. Her eyes snapped toward me. What is this? The amendment. You said there was an amendment. I said there was a new agreement. Her face tightened. You can't just change a prenup. I didn't. I pointed toward the signature block. You changed the circumstances. The amendment was prepared after the restructuring, reviewed by counsel, and disclosed through the required process. Her attorney finally spoke. Claire, let me see that. She pushed the pages toward him. He read silently. The room became very still. I remembered what Michael had told me. Facts. Dates. Signatures. No shouting. No revenge. Let the paperwork speak. Claire watched her attorney's face. That was when I saw the first crack. Not panic. Recognition. She was beginning to understand that this wasn't a bluff. Her attorney reached page 4. His eyes stopped. He read it again. Then he looked at Claire. You didn't review this? I was never given this version. Michael answered calmly. The documents were properly delivered to counsel. Claire turned toward him. Not to me. You were represented. Her jaw tightened. That doesn't mean I agreed to it. I said nothing. The truth was more complicated than a dramatic signature. The new agreement wasn't magic. It wasn't a secret weapon that could erase her rights overnight. It did something more dangerous to her expectations. It clarified them. The house. The investment accounts. The company interests. The properties acquired separately. The transfers made before separation. Everything she had assumed belonged in one giant pile was now divided into categories she had never bothered to understand. She had wanted simplicity. The document gave her structure. Claire flipped faster. Her breathing changed. Then she reached the section about financial transfers made in anticipation of separation. Her hand stopped. What does this mean? Michael answered. It means the transfers you've made will be examined. Her face went pale. That has nothing to do with the prenup. It does now, he said. She looked at me. You knew. I met her eyes. I knew you were preparing for something. Her expression hardened. You've been spying on me? No, then how? I looked at the stack of documents between us. You left a trail. Silence. That sentence landed harder than anything else. Claire leaned back. For 12 years, she had known me as a man who solved problems by working harder. She had never understood that I also remembered details. Receipts. Dates. Conversations. Promises. I remembered everything. She picked up the last page. Her eyes moved across the paragraph. Then she stopped. The color drained from her face. Her attorney reached for the document. Claire. She didn't answer. What does it say? She whispered. He read it again. Then quietly explained what the provision meant for the assets she had expected to claim. Her shoulders dropped. Not dramatically. Just an inch. But I saw it. The confidence was leaving her body. She looked at me. You knew this would happen. No, then why are you so calm? I thought about the man I had been 12 years earlier. The man sitting on the floor of that freezing apartment, laughing with her because we had no money for a heater. I thought about every sacrifice. Every promise. Every time I chose peace over questions. I'm calm, I said, because I finally stopped guessing. Claire looked down. Her wedding ring turned slowly beneath her thumb. For the first time since she had demanded the divorce, she didn't look like someone walking away from a marriage. She looked like someone realizing she had misunderstood the man she was leaving. Her attorney closed the folder. We need time to review this. Michael nodded. Take all the time you need. Claire stood. She gathered her handbag, but left the documents on the table. At the door, she stopped. Daniel. I looked up. Her voice had changed. The certainty was gone. Did you ever love me? I held her gaze. Yes. She swallowed. Then why does this feel like you planned to destroy me? I shook my head. I didn't plan to destroy you. I looked at the folder between us. I planned to protect myself. She said nothing. The door closed behind her. And for the first time, I understood the real twist. The prenup wasn't what frightened Claire. It was the fact that I had finally learned to read it. : writing variant equals, document, ID equals 82914. Title equals Part 7. Your wife is not fighting for the marriage anymore. Michael said it while looking at the latest documents. She's fighting for the outcome. I stared through his office window. Below us, people crossed the street beneath umbrellas, carrying coffee, checking phones, living ordinary lives. I wished my life still felt ordinary. It didn't. The divorce had become a negotiation. And negotiations reveal things marriage sometimes hides. Claire's attorney had sent a formal response that morning. They challenged portions of the amendment. They questioned the timing. They questioned the financial transfers. And they requested a full accounting of assets. Michael placed the pages on the desk. They're trying to create leverage. I read the first page. Do they have any? Not much. He paused. But there's something else. He opened another folder. A property statement. Then another. Then another. Claire had been moving money between accounts before the divorce request. Some transfers were small. Some were not. Every transaction had a date. Every date mattered. Michael tapped the timeline. Look at this. I leaned closer. The first transfer had occurred 6 months before Claire demanded the divorce. The second, 4 months later. The third, only 11 days before she sat across from me and said she wanted the house. 11 days. I felt something cold settle in my chest. She hadn't decided that morning. She had prepared for it. I thought back to that night. Claire had been sitting on the edge of our bed, scrolling through her phone. I had asked if everything was okay. She said she was tired. I believed her. That memory hurt more than I expected. Not because I missed her. Because I realized how easily trust can become blindness. Michael continued. There is one more thing. He slid a printed email toward me. It was from Claire's attorney. The subject line was simple. Asset positioning before filing. I read it twice. Then a third time. My hand stayed still. The email wasn't explicit about everything. It didn't need to be. There were references to protecting certain funds, establishing separate accounts, and creating a financial position before formal proceedings began. Claire had been planning. Carefully. Quietly. Patiently. I closed my eyes. For years I had believed betrayal was explosive. A slammed door. A confession. A message discovered at midnight. I was wrong. Sometimes betrayal is a spreadsheet. Sometimes it's a bank transfer. Sometimes it's a calendar appointment nobody tells you about. And sometimes it sits quietly beside you at breakfast and asks how your morning is going. I opened my eyes. What happens now? Michael folded his hands. Now we let her choose. Choose what? How far she wants to take this. That afternoon, Claire called. I almost didn't answer. Then I did. Hello? Silence. I could hear traffic behind her. Can we talk? We are talking. Daniel. Her voice was softer. I didn't expect things to become like this. I looked at the black folder on my desk. Neither did I. I was angry. I know. I thought you would fight me. I thought about it. She breathed out slowly. Do you hate me? No. That answer seemed to hurt her. Why not? Because hate would mean I still want something from you. Silence. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then she asked the question I had been expecting. Can we settle this privately? I looked toward the window. The rain had stopped. Sunlight was breaking through the clouds. I'm willing to be reasonable. I don't want to lose everything. You won't. Her breath caught. What does that mean? It means the documents will decide. Another silence. Then her voice dropped. Daniel, please. I closed my eyes. That word used to have power over me. Please. I had spent years responding to it. Fixing things. Forgiving things. Staying quiet. This time I didn't. Have your attorney contact Michael. She whispered my name. I ended the call. The room became silent again. But something had changed. I wasn't waiting for Claire to come back. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't waiting for her to understand. I was moving forward. The next morning, Michael called me with an update. Her attorney requested mediation. Fine. There's a complication. I sat up. What kind? He paused. Claire wants the house. I almost smiled. Not because I wanted to keep it. Because she still didn't understand. The house wasn't the thing she should have been worried about. There was another provision in the new agreement. One Claire had completely overlooked. And if she insisted on keeping the house, she was about to discover exactly how expensive that choice could become. You think the house is yours because your name is on the deed. It isn't that simple. Michael said it slowly. I was sitting across from him in his office, the mediation papers spread across the table between us. The house had been the center of Claire's demands from the beginning. She wanted it because she believed it represented security, status, and control. But there was one problem. She had never read the entire agreement. Michael turned the page toward me. The house was purchased after the original prenup, but the amendment established how jointly occupied property would be handled if either spouse initiated separation under certain circumstances. I read the paragraph again. Then I understood why he had smiled when Claire demanded the house. She could keep it. But keeping it came with obligations. And those obligations would affect the rest of the settlement. I leaned back. So she can have the house? Potentially. And that's what she wants. Very badly. I looked out the window. For years, that house had been our sanctuary. I remembered the first evening we moved in. Boxes everywhere. Paint still drying. Claire had stood in the empty living room with her hands on her hips and laughed. We actually did it. I had wrapped my arms around her. Yeah. She kissed me. Promise me we'll never let money change us. I had promised. That memory felt almost cruel now. Because money hadn't changed us. It had revealed us. The mediation began 2 days later. Claire arrived with her attorney. She looked exhausted. Her hair was pulled back tightly, and the confidence she had carried into our first meeting was gone. I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. Neither was I. We sat across from each other. The mediator explained the process. No accusations. No interruptions. Everything would be documented. Claire's attorney presented their proposal first. The house. A portion of the investment accounts. A substantial interest in the company. Certain personal assets. I listened. Then Michael responded with the The amendment. The property structure. The financial disclosures. Nothing dramatic happened. No one slammed a table. No one shouted. That made it worse. Because every document was another piece of reality Claire could not argue with. At one point, her attorney leaned toward her and whispered something. Claire shook her head. No, he whispered again. She looked at him. No. I'm not giving up the house. The mediator glanced at Michael. Michael remained calm. We're not asking her to give it up. Claire looked confused. Then what do you want? Michael answered. We want the agreement followed. Her expression tightened. What does that mean? I looked at her. It means you can have what you asked for. She stared at me. But? There is always a but. Her attorney closed his eyes briefly. Michael explained the numbers. If Claire kept the house under the terms of the amendment, certain offsets would apply. The equity, liabilities, and separate property classifications would have to be accounted for. The house suddenly wasn't the jackpot she thought it was. It was an asset with weight. A beautiful one. An expensive one. A heavy one. Claire looked down at the spreadsheet. Then at me. You knew. I read the agreement. Her lips parted. You actually read it. I nodded. The room went quiet. For 12 years, Claire had assumed I was the man who signed whatever needed signing because I trusted her. Maybe that had been true once. Not anymore. She pushed the papers away. I don't understand. I looked at her. I think you do. Her eyes became wet. Not tears yet. Just the first shine of them. You could have warned me. I thought about that. About what? About all of this. I shook my head. You were the one who wanted the divorce. She looked down. I didn't think you'd fight. I didn't either. That was the truth. I had never wanted to fight Claire. I had wanted to understand her. But somewhere between the first secret transfer and the first attorney meeting, understanding had become impossible without documents. The mediator called for a short break. Claire stood and walked toward the window. I watched her silhouette against the glass. For the first time, she looked small inside the life she had demanded. Then her attorney approached her. They spoke quietly. Claire suddenly turned around. Her eyes locked onto mine. There was fear there now. Real fear. She walked back to the table. Daniel. I waited. There's something you need to know. Her voice trembled. My lawyer found another document. I frowned. What document? She swallowed. The original file from before our wedding. She looked at me. And there's something in it that neither of us remembered. My stomach tightened. What? She placed a photocopy on the table. I looked down. Then I saw the clause. And for the first time since this divorce began, I was the one who couldn't breathe. That clause means the amendment was never the real weapon. Michael's voice was quiet. It means the original agreement may change everything. For several seconds I couldn't move. The photocopy lay between us, a single paragraph that suddenly made 12 years of marriage feel like a locked room with one door I had never noticed. Claire stood across the table, watching me. Her eyes were red now. Not from anger. Not anymore. Fear. I picked up the page. I read the clause again. Then once more. It was simple. Almost painfully simple. If either spouse initiated divorce after a documented transfer of marital or separate assets had been made in anticipation of separation, those transfers could be subject to review under the original agreement. My chest tightened. The money Claire had moved. The accounts she had created. The timing. All of it suddenly mattered in a way either of us had understood. I looked at Michael. So what does this mean? He took a breath. It means we stop thinking about what Claire might receive and start calculating what she actually brought into the separation. Claire shook her head. No. That's not what we agreed to. I looked at her. Maybe not. Her voice broke. Daniel, I didn't know. I believed her. That was the strange part. For the first time in months, I believed her. She hadn't understood the agreement. She had trusted her attorney. She had trusted assumptions. She had trusted the idea that I would simply surrender because I still loved her. And I had made the same mistake in reverse. I had assumed the documents would protect me without understanding what they could actually do. We sat there in silence. The mediator waited. Nobody spoke. Outside, traffic moved beneath the afternoon sun. Somewhere, a siren faded into the distance. Life continued. Ours was being rewritten. Finally, I looked at Claire. "What do you want?" She stared at me. "I don't know anymore." Those 5 words carried more truth than everything she had said since asking for the divorce. She no longer wanted the house. She no longer talked about the investment accounts. She wasn't asking about the company. She was looking at me. Not my assets. Not the agreement. Me. "Do you still want the divorce?" I asked. Her lips trembled. "I thought I did." I waited. "And now?" She looked down at the table. "Now I think I wanted a different life, but I don't know if I wanted a life without you." The room became painfully quiet. There are moments when a man realizes revenge would be easy. Walking away would be easy. Letting someone suffer the consequences of their own choices would be easy. Forgiveness is harder. Trust is harder. Starting over is hardest of all. I could have used every document against her. I could have fought over every dollar. I could have turned the divorce into a war and watched her lose everything she thought she was entitled to. But that wasn't what I wanted anymore. I wanted the truth. And now I had it. Claire had betrayed my trust. She had prepared to leave. She had moved money. She had assumed I was too emotional to protect myself. Those things were real. So was the woman I had once loved. Both truths could exist at the same time. I closed the folder. "The divorce can proceed," I said. Claire looked at me. "Daniel, but it doesn't have to become a war." Tears finally slipped down her face. She didn't wipe them away. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. I looked toward the window. The sunlight had finally broken through the clouds. "Because I don't want to become someone I hate just because you hurt me." 6 months later, the house was sold. The accounts were divided according to the final settlement. The company remained mine. Claire walked away with less than she expected, but more than she feared. And I walked away with something money couldn't buy. Peace. We never remarried. Some doors should stay closed. But every now and then, I think about that morning when she demanded a divorce and believed she had already won. She thought the new prenup would destroy her. In the end, it didn't. It simply forced both of us to stop pretending. Because sometimes the biggest twist isn't discovering that you can win. It's realizing that winning doesn't mean destroying the person who lost. It means walking away with your dignity intact. And for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't walking away from my wife. I was walking toward myself.